Please come to order, everyone. Let's begin with roll call. Mike?
Kevin Mitchell,
Here.
Priscilla Manuelito,
Here.
Michael Schaaf,
Here.
Chris Mortensen,
Here.
Charles Long.
Here. Thank you, Mike. We do have a quorum. We have 5 members present. Let's begin our meeting for today. Roll call. Kevin? Okay, Kevin. Thank you. Let's go down to item 2, agenda, board members.
Mr. President. Oh, go ahead. Mr. President, I'd make a motion that we approve today's agenda.
Okay, motion's been made by Chris Mortensen to adopt the agenda, second by Michael Shaw. Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Schaaf,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. We have approved our agenda for today's meeting. Let's go down to item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes from December 14, 2020. Board members?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of December 14, 2020.
Okay, a motion's been made by Michael Shaw to
Second.
approve the meeting minutes of December 14, 2020, second by Priscilla Manlito. Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Schaaf,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. We have approved the meeting minutes of December 14, 2020. Thank you very much. Let's go down to item number 4, consent items. Board members?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items 4A, 4B, and 4C.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Schaaf to approve the consent agenda items consisting of 4A, 4B, 4C. Is there a second? Second by Chris Mortensen. Roll call.
Mr. President, I have a question, please.
Okay, before we vote on it, yes.
Mr. Hyatt or Giovanna, on the first item listed under food services, the decrease, is that due to COVID or students not eating in at school?
Giovanna?
Mr. Long, Ms. Manuelito, members of the board, superintendent. So there were some revenue projection changes as well as cash adjustment changes. And because the state system doesn't allow us to transfer between those types of revenue and asset type funds, we have to do increases and decreases to level them out. And so you probably noticed that there's also an increase, and that's because we submit our budget for the subsequent year before the end of the current year. So some of those are just estimated guesses as to what's going to come in when, as to whether or not revenue is going to hit before June 30th or after June 30th.
Okay.
Giovanna, with food services, do they contract out their own food? Food companies, like where they get their milk, where they get their vegetables, the vendors?
Mr. Long, Ms. Manuelito, yes, that is correct.
Okay.
They belong to an educational cooperative, I believe, that also leverages bidding prices across the United States.
Okay. So, Mr. Hyatt, if we could get, if we could ask to see what those vendors are, and I don't know if we'll be able to get a report from food services next, but I've been hearing a lot of concerns about that, but I wanted to know if we could do that, or have a listing of who their vendors are.
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir. Thank you, Giovanna.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we are in the midst of voting on the consent agenda items. Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. We've approved the consent agenda items. Let's go down to study circle. Mike?
President Long, members of the board, I have a few items to report on today, and then we'll go on to the Cultural Education Department report. First, there has been a lot of questions about testing and vaccinations for our employees. I don't have a lot of information on this topic other than we have started the new testing protocol, which requires a saliva test, which is obviously a simpler test than the nose/cranial test that's been going on. So we have already begun this testing this last week and continuing with this testing, and what it entails is us sending out information to employees. They request the test in the mail. When they get the test in the mail, they basically go through the process online with Department of Health and in order to get tested. We're currently attempting to test at least 10% of our staff a week per the Public Education Department. And so this means that about every 10 weeks, staff would be tested automatically. As far as the vaccination, there have been a lot of rumors swirling around about vaccinations being available or not available. We have been staying in contact with our local medical people in our community to see when those tests are available. We should be getting some more information later this afternoon on whether the next round of vaccinations will be coming to our local hospitals. This next round of vaccinations would be prioritized for what they call Group 1B, which are educators, even though within that 1B there are specific requirements for those that would get vaccinated first. And so there's several categories, for example, age, underlying health conditions, etc. We have also sent out a link. Anybody in New Mexico can request a vaccination at this time. And so we have sent that link out. I know there's been some troubles at the state level with that link, but we're continually giving out information from the Department of Health and Governor's Office regarding those opportunities for, it's not just our employees, but all residents in New Mexico where they can request a vaccination. From what I understand, for those who have been able to get through, is they request it, somebody calls them back or communicates with the person to schedule a time to go receive that vaccination, and then they're able to go get vaccinated. The next topic is on January 19th, because we are able to test 10% of our staff, that for students that have an opportunity to go back to hybrid learning on the 19th, we will be ready to do that. We put out a survey, and I provided a copy of the survey to you before the meeting. This survey kind of gives you an idea of people's interest in, or parents' interest / students' interest in going back to school under the current conditions. I want to make sure you understand this survey was given before the break, and so there have been a lot of changes and a lot of new information regarding vaccinations that are coming into the community. I would suspect that when more people have the opportunity to get the vaccinations, that would give parents more confidence and students more confidence in coming back to school or being around other people. The first survey, I was going to go over really briefly. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Just some information which I thought was interesting. So again, this is before vaccinations were more readily available. Approximately a third of the parents want their student to at least return back to school part-time, and that's pretty significant. We had about 25% wanting to a month ago, and now it's gone up to about a third. So again, I suspect that number will continue to rise as more people get vaccinated. The next question revolves around how well the education is going for their students at home. And about 46% are either somewhat or disagree or strongly disagree that they're getting a better education at home than when they're able to attend in person. It's almost 50%. significant chunk of 34% were neutral on that question, and 20%, so 1/5 of all parents that were surveyed felt that their education at home was better. The last question revolves around the negative social emotional harms to their own students that they see in their household. And I think the interesting part of this was that 35% of parents, a little more than a third of our parents, believe that there has been at least some social, emotional, or negative side effect of their students not being able to attend in school. So granted, you have to also factor in on these statistics that some students have been in school, so the parents may have differing opinions, because we have had about 1,300 students that have attended school at least during this fall semester. And again, there's lots of different factors that can affect this, but this was for over 4,900 students that were parents were part of this survey. Any questions to that point? I have a few more items after.
Yes, Mr. President, I have one question. I don't know if I missed this, Mr. Hyatt, but you stated that every 10 weeks our staff will be tested. Is that all staff, including bus drivers, kitchen, or just teachers?
It's for staff that are around students. So it can mean custodians, it can be bus drivers, it could be teachers, administration.
Everybody.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
it's prioritized. The public education department requires that 10% of those that are around students during hybrid learning need to be tested.
So just 10% of our staff are going to be tested?
Per week.
Okay.
So that's how, I assume that it used to be 5% in the fall, and with the new saliva tests, they're able to increase that, and I'm assuming that they have more of those tests, and so the state can accommodate about 10% of the staff currently.
My other question is the survey that you presented with us, is this the first survey we did like this, or how many surveys have we completed with this questionnaire?
With this specific questionnaire, this is the first one with this questionnaire. I'll go on to the next.
I have a question.
Sure.
For number 2, getting a better education at home, is there, do we have any data that we can relate to this or correlate with as far as what the student grades are doing at this point? I mean, comparing them to, prior to last year when they were in school and what their grades are as of now.
Sure, we did present in the fall that data comparing, I think, the last 2 years, first quarter. We saw the decrease there. We expect that decrease to go down even more because our attendance rate has also slightly dropped since the first quarter. So once that data is finalized and we have all the grade information, then we'll be able to submit to the board those trends for the second or first semester or also second quarter of this year compared to past years.
Oh, okay. So with that, I mean, I know there's a leniency as far as, I know a lot of the, some teachers were saying that, even though their students had an F grade, they were still having to pass them or still having to give them a, not a failing grade or something. Is that what's happening, or?
There is no district mandate that says that you have to pass a student. Actually, they're supposed to follow board policy. Granted, there has been some leniency on the amount of work given the classroom environment that students and teachers are in. But the standard, we already have a set standards timeline that teachers should be hitting in all classrooms. We can give more information on that, but if there is somebody specifically telling us, a teacher, that they have to pass a student, they should not be doing that, and it should be reported if that's being done.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Long, I have another question for Mr. Hyatt. Do we still have a PR person?
Currently, we have a PR department. that includes Vanessa Duckett, along with, can't remember Alan's last name, but Alan Arthur, sorry, I should remember that, sports reporter, past sports reporter, who have been doing, are part of our PR department, which both of them fall under Giovanna Hanks. One of my items, I'll just throw it out there now since it's later on my list, is one of the new PR things that we have been doing is GMCS Connect. That is an insert that goes into the Gallup Sun monthly, where we put out more information from the district, just another avenue in print. And we're trying to distribute those papers more regionally outside of just Gallup, but it goes out to the whole community of McKinley County. So
I just think a lot of this information that you just informed us about, as a parent, I would like to know, and I'm just thinking if there's any way they can get this information out on all of those aspects, either through Facebook or social media, excuse me, like you mentioned, the newspaper, radio, because I think a lot of our parents, even our staff, I don't know if they all got an email on this information too, not to the principals. I'm really starting not to appreciate the lack of communication between principals and staff, but I think the emails need to go out to the staff that we are thinking of them, we are thinking, encouraging, trying to get vaccines for them, and working out these kind of details. And I think as parents, we also would like to know that our teachers will soon be vaccinated, and getting this information out. I think it's really important that we continue to have that communication. I really haven't seen much. I mean, I used to, and I think it's kind of decreased. I don't know if it's due to the transition, but I just think that we need to get more information back out there again. I miss all the wonderful flyers that used to go out. So just hopefully we can get that back. Even the survey. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
thank you.
One more question. Do we have a website, or I don't know, I know we were changing over to a different program as far as where parents or students can go in to check their grades to see how they're doing, or we still don't have that up?
No, we do have a new system, student information system, where parents log in. Mr. Harasik, can you give a slight update on that and where we're at? I know that there was some transition where some of the features or functions we had to do without for a little period of time as we made that transition. But Mr. Harasik can give us kind of an update of where we're at today.
I haven't talked I haven't talked to Lori in a while, but as far as I know, in November we reached out to parents to teach them how to do that, how to access grades. It's a little challenging to share that with them without having them there in person, but I believe we had each school site reach out to parents to teach them how to access their grades in the new system called Synergy. I can get a better update from Lori today and let Mr. Hyatt know, because I think I talked to her back in November, so I know that rolled out. I don't know the success rate with parents from that perspective of how many actually came in or got the paperwork to access grades.
So the Synergy program that's up and running right now, someone can go in there and check on their child's grades?
Correct, and that's correct. And we were able to get that part of it functioning early November, and to get the information out to parents so they can do that now, yes.
And has the information gone out on that as far as that's available? Because there's a lot of parents that don't know that's available.
So yes, the information did go out. I can follow up with Lori and she can tell me the process that was used for that so that you know exactly what happened. So I don't want to say that how it happened, but I know that it did. I'll get it from Lori, the exact process, how we reached out to schools, to reach out to parents to get the information. We may have put it on the website. We may have put it on Facebook and had school sites reach out, but let me just get confirmation from Lori what that looked like back in November.
Thank you.
Mr. President and Mr. Harasik, that might be something like if there's a training document like that, that would probably be pretty valuable to like share
Yes.
on Facebook or, you know, put it on the web page or whatever, just so it's like that way we can really get it out there. We've got a pretty healthy following on Facebook.
And we may have
yeah.
done that, so I can't speak either way because it's been about 2 months. 2.5 months, but I will follow up with Lori, and then we'll make sure that that happens. But I can assure you that all parents have access to that portion of the program
Thank you.
if they
Thank you,
want it.
Gerald.
Mr. Long and
Any
Mr.
other questions?
Harasik. Is this new, what do you call it, student information system easier, about the same, harder than the last one?
So we believe that it's much easier. It's much more user-friendly.
Okay,
It's much easier to create reports, kind of just like live on the spot. But it's the main reason we went with them is because it is a much more user-friendly platform.
maybe
Okay.
maybe our PR can do a video training to show where to click, what to look for, or whatever to do, like a video tutorial of how to do that for our parents or grandparents. You know, we do
Right.
have our grandparents out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald.
Couple more items, President Long, and I'll be done. I also wanted to report that we are hearing word that more federal funding will be coming to the school districts in New Mexico. They call this CRRSA, or we're just going to simplify it and call it CARES Act 2, second round. And so we'll be letting you know more information as that money arrives. So far we know that it's going to be for similar items than what was allowed for before with the CARES Act funding, and probably expanded. There may be some, from what we understand, the ability to use that for like air purification and other items that are even more than the PPE and those types of things. So there may be some air purification opportunities with that money also.
Mr. Hyatt and
Sure.
Mr. Long and Mr. Hyatt, yesterday, my chapter at the Root chapter had a meeting, and I attended the meeting. They requested for our board here at Gallup McKinley County for 2 supporting letters. One is for County Road 27, the bridge there. It's a 1-lane bridge. They're wanting to ask, they already asked our Council Delegate Ed Benyazi, talked with Commissioner Moore about a 2-lane bridge there, so and that could hold a larger ton capacity, I think it's called.
Right, tonnage.
They use fancy words, but I'm just trying to paraphrase them. But they will be doing that, and he wanted a letter of support from our board or from you, Mr. Hyatt. And then they're also wanting to, they contacted Council Delegate, again, Yazi, Freeland, and another Council Delegate have contacted the governor and have requested to repave the road from Theroux.
Make sure that everybody knows of the next buildings that are going to be constructed or we're attempting to construct in our school district. Red Rock Elementary and Tehachapi High School are the first 2 that are in I think, we're in design right now, or pretty close to design. And so usually the design process is a year. We're trying to push them as hard as we can to get those things done so we can start as soon as possible. The next 4 schools that we would like to see completed and are pushing for are Crown Point High School, Navajo Pine High School, Theroux High School, and Gallup High also needs to be replaced. President Long, members of the board, thank you for the questions, and that's my report for today.
Mr. President
Yes.
and Mr. Hyatt, I have a quick question. Is there any new, Mr. Hyatt, I know I talked to you the other day about this, but is there any new news about, I see the legislative session coming up here with impact aid, or if there's, you know, I don't know if it would be appropriate to invite some of our legislators or any of them to maybe help us understand what's happening with impact aid.
Sure. President Long, Mr. Mortensen, we are trying to set up a Zoom where we can all get together with our local legislators to talk about those several of those issues. With the winning of the capital outlay lawsuit, makes it even more interesting for this legislative session, and that just happened, and so that changes what's happening to some extent, because not only do we have the Ozzie Martinez lawsuit, We have the capital outlay lawsuit where both judges decided that the state was not providing a sufficient and uniform education for students. And as we know, that significantly hurt. That means we are being significantly hurt, and our students are being significantly hurt by that inequitable funding. And also, as you know, we have the federal lawsuit or federal challenge that we have over impact aid. That's also we're in the midst of right now. So I will double check today again with our lobbyists to see if we have a date, and then we will be able to put some out for you guys so that we can get together on a Zoom.
Okay.
Mr.
Sounds
Long,
good. Yes.
Mr. Hyatt, PR. I mean, that is a huge celebration that we should be getting everywhere. And, I just put it on my Facebook and just, just for a few minutes, and a lot of people were commenting on it. And I think we need to get that word out there that we did win that lawsuit. And, I really would like to emphasize that and get that good news out there for our children. And maybe each school could do something to post it on their website or something. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I believe it was
Mr.
on
President.
Facebook, but we know that we're talking about putting it in the paper also.
Kevin?
Mr. President, yeah, I just want to say that I think that's a good idea, what Priscilla just said, because, at one point they were saying that we were just wasting money on lawsuits and that we were, we should be spending elsewhere, but this shows that, we are putting the money in the right place and that, it is benefiting.
Yeah, I think they was the union, the AFT union, who was saying that because they continually try to keep taking us to court and then blame us for spending money on lawsuits. They're the main cause of it. The lawsuits that we do on purpose are to help students, and I would hope that the union follows suit with the school board and focusing on students' needs and not just their own adult needs.
And then I'm glad Gerald walked back up there. I was going to ask, I know with the synergy, the parents need a code to get into that. How is that code being given to the parents, or how is that being done?
Yes, so what I can tell you is we have actually, I talked to some people real quick, we have done a pretty significant rollout in November to give that to them. Also on the website, right under the parent tab, the first thing that comes up under the parent tab is to get into Synergy. And then when it takes you to that point, there's a tutorial, a one-pager that we created for them to be able to go through to get on. And once again, we did do a significant amount of work around that in November. And again, you can go right on the website under the parent tab. The first thing that comes up is to get into Synergy. And then there's also a tutorial there, a one-pager that we created to help you to be able to navigate that and to get the information that you needed.
So it sounds like, Mr. Rasek, that we may need to do another run of that if we did it in November. Find out different ways we can push those passwords out. If maybe, I'm sure we have some data on who's been contacted, who hasn't, or who hasn't accessed it. I'm sure we can tell who has not accessed it. We can reach out to those parents to try to help them get on, because I know how it is when you get a new system, whatever it might be on the internet, trying to log in. You might think you know how to do it and got trained on it, and then you haven't done it for a few weeks, and then there may be some difficulties. So we can start over and check to see who still needs help.
Yeah, because I do know some parents are still trying to get onto the old one.
If they don't staple the note to my kid's shirt and send them home, and a lot of times I don't really get it.
We didn't give the parent stuff to kids in this case. All right, thanks.
Kushi, thank you, Gerald.
Mr. Long, President Long, that's all I have today. Next up, we have a report from the the Cultural Education Department. So I'll have Dr. White come up.
Kushi.
Mr. Long, members of the board, and Mr. Hyatt. The last board meeting, I gave a quick overview of what's going on in the cultural ed department. So I'm going to give you a more detailed overview of what's going on. Right now, we have all of our schools except for Crown Point Middle and the Zuni language program that have teachers. So Crown Point Mid teacher, we moved to Crown Point Elementary because of the numbers. She didn't have a lot of student numbers, and Crown Point Elementary did. So we moved her from the middle to the elementary, and the students who are currently was enrolled at Crown Point Mid, we gave them, since everybody's on remote, we gave them to Navajo Mid, and I believe Tohatchi Mid. So the students are still receiving their instruction through teachers remotely. So all of our schools do have at least one teacher that's teaching Navajo, except for the Zuni program in Rama. And then we also mentioned last week, the last board meeting, that we're using videos to develop a library or a bank of lesson plans and projects for our students. And I'd like to expand more upon that. This past spring, when we were forced to go into remote learning, we realized that we needed to do more for our students and our teachers. So the project developed into using a bank of lesson plans, a bank of videos that teachers and students can use. And then the team worked from there to develop quarter 1, 2, and 4 for K-8 and Navajo 1. And these are lessons that are being recorded and posted on SharePoint for now. So the teachers are working at developing quarter 4, and then for Navajo 2 and for history and government. They should be completed with that by May. So they're working that and posting onto SharePoint now. And we're looking at using those videos. Not only that, also the teachers that developed assessments last year too. So as they're going through the remote model of learning, they realize that some of the assessments are not, can be refined. So they're looking at the benchmark assessments that have been developed and looking at how that can be used in a remote, in a virtual setting. So the pandemic really has focused us to really look at what we are doing and what we can do more effectively for our students in a remote setting. Part of it is standards. We had a whole bunch of stuff to learn from quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, etc. So instead of focusing on a lot of stuff, we're really focusing in on expressive language. Expressive language means when you taught a student in the language, they respond to you back in that same language. So we're working on developing expressive language skills. And that also has developed in working with videos. And then we hear a lot about how technology is not very well received in the classroom. But we looked at that and said, okay, we know parents are there. We know grandparents are there, so let's help them help our students. So instead of the Knowledge Bowl that we were looking at doing a remote type of setting for Knowledge Bowl, we switched it to projects that can be videotaped. And the students and their parents or grandparents can work on a project. There's already a rubric developed, and we're looking at giving them supplies, materials for those to our teachers. And what they're planning on doing is K-5 students will focus in on family and how family can help enhance the language and help the culture, anything that they can do as far as on developing language and culture skills. Mid-school, we're going to be looking at that and focusing on STEM, and we're trying to integrate college career pathways into this whole project as well. Instead of just saying a language program siloed, we're trying to incorporate others so that we can get more collaboration among the students and other teachers as well. And then in the high school setting, we're looking at focusing on what topics and subjects that they are learning either in Navajo 1, Navajo 2, or history and government. So we're making it more comprehensive and integrating the language and culture into those topics. So we're looking at doing projects, and the teachers are going to be taping the students, and they're going to, again, we're going to put that onto SharePoint for now, and working on a platform so that it's not just housed in SharePoint, so it can be more accessible to other students and other teachers within the district. So as we were talking through that, we're looking at, okay, copyright. These are things being done by our teachers and our kids. Are there any copyright laws and other copyrights that we need to look at? So we're looking at different avenues as well. So the remote virtual setting is challenging, but we're looking at how can we do things differently and working with that. And another one is the lack of teachers. We don't have any, even though they're advertised, we don't have any teachers knocking down our doors to come in. So we're looking at long-term, 5 years from now, what would our pool of teachers look like? And that's one of the reasons why we started the video, the online bank of lessons to do. So in case, in the future, reality says most likely we'll have less number of teachers. So therefore, teachers can still teach in a remote setting, but there'll be resources and materials ready for them to use. So we're looking at that and evaluating that. Resources, all principals developed the Bilingual Grant. They said that they would teach the language approximately 1 hour per week, 1 hour per day, which averages out to approximately 5 hours per week. But because of the pandemic, it has thrown us all up for a loop. And then when the chips fell down, we looked at exactly in reality, what does that look like? So at the secondary level, for example, so a lot of the schools are teaching a subject twice a week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, for example, and then Monday and Wednesdays for different subjects. So instead of an hour per day, it's averaging out to not necessarily 5, but close to 5 as possible per week. So our students still are getting the content, and so that's where a lot of our resources are built in, and I know we're working with teachers on using more of the technology as a tool rather than something to avoid and put aside. So basically that's my report for now. Oh, back to the teachers. So far we have 34 teachers in all schools, like I said, except for Crown Point Mid. 18 of them, and we have one that's doing Rema L, and that's in addition to their coaching duties, which they already have as well. So everybody has stepped up, and they're willing to do what they need to do for our students.
Okay.
So thank you. I don't know if you have any questions.
Board members, questions, comments?
I have a couple questions there. I know you, well, first of all, I would like to ask, I guess, how many teachers have we moved? Because I have noticed, teachers that have moved, but yet you turn around and advertise their position again. So I didn't understand the reasoning of moving a teacher and then advertising their position for another teacher. So with that being said, if we're trying to build a program, and then we move a teacher and then advertise the position, to me that's a disruption. Because they've had these students from the beginning of school till Christmas, and then we move them, and then we bring in another teacher who has to come in and start a whole new learning process with these students that the students don't know. So what is the thinking behind that, I guess?
This past semester, there were several schools that had no teachers, so we did move some teachers, especially schools that had more than one. So one of those teachers moved from their current school to other schools that did have a vacancy. So we moved, I think, about 9 total teachers, and that includes our coaches that are teaching remotely. So as far as for next year, we are advertising for their positions, the current positions that was already advertised prior to the transfer. So we're looking at that and giving, I believe we're going to be looking at that to see if they're going to stay at their transferred school. For example, if I was transferred to Catherine Miller, for example, I would have that option to stay there if I want to stay there, or get replaced, or move back to my original position that I had. So I think that's what we're looking at long term.
So the teachers that you did move them, were they given the option, or did you just move them?
They were given the option, especially those that had 2 teachers in each school. We talked with their principals, talked with them and asked them who wants to stay, who wants to go, and we gave them that choice there.
Okay.
Priscilla?
To add on to that, thank you, Mr. Long. So the teachers that were moved have the option to go back at the end of this year if they want to? Is that? No? Yes?
I don't see why not. I believe the intent was to make sure there's teachers in the classroom, and so if I'm sure that we could accommodate somebody. I guess it kind of depends on what staffing looks like and recruitment looks like in the spring. These are obviously tough positions to find over the last several years, and so it's one of the positions that we haven't stopped trying to hire. So I guess it kind of depends on what kind of interest we get in positions.
So what kind of recruitment are we doing then? I mean, are we just advertising and that's all? I mean, what?
We're advertising on the website. We're also working with Navajo Nation program. They're the ones that assess the teachers to be, and they're the ones that allow them to take their tests and pass them or not pass them. So we're working with Navajo Nation on who's passing the test, and that's all we can do.
So, Mr. Long,
Yes.
just an idea. We had a discussion on this with the Navajo Nation Board of Education through the scholarship program, and I think I like aid the SNP on that side, to help our children with internships. Why don't we offer an internship to our students that are interested into education, and maybe work with them and start letting them intern with our Navajo language and culture teachers, and just let them get the foot knowledge of what really happens in those classrooms. I think that would be a great way for us to also kind of recruit. But I think since, there's no effort, I shouldn't say no effort, there's lack of effort from our own nation, maybe we can utilize that with our own internship programs.
Pauletta, you mentioned that the standards, we follow the quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. Are all our teachers up to date with their all on quarter 3 right now? I mean, we've been in school for a week now, and are they all starting under quarter 3? Do you know?
Yes, they should be doing quarter 3 curriculum and standards.
Okay. And then when you hand them these when they're given like quarter 1, quarter 2, this is what you guys are going to do, are you explaining to these teachers, especially like the new ones, or how they're supposed to actually put this information out, or are you just giving them their file or whatever and say, here's quarter 3, do it?
They
Is
have
there-
a support system built in through the cultural aid department, and they've been working with teachers on what those standards look like by quarter and how it should be rolling out. So they do have that available, and if they have any questions, they do reach out to their language coach. And then again, like I said, the video project is really is encompassing, if not all the teachers, so they're aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And even though quarter 3 is done, or a lot of the lessons already done, they're really looking at it to refine it. So they've done their recording in advance of some of the lessons, but they're looking at it, does it really work, and how can we refine it before we sort of publish it, kind of thing. It's not really published, but just for use for a wider audience.
Okay. Because at your last presentation, I know I did ask about communication, with our people here in central office and our teachers. What have you done with as far as reaching out to see what the teachers' needs are, see how things are actually going, if they have any suggestions? I mean, this can't be a one-size-fits-all. I mean, a K through 2 teacher would know what's going on there. A mid-school teacher would know what's going on at their school as far as how to teach mid-school and then high school. So we can't, I don't know. It sounds like we just have one main thing, and okay, here it is.
The coaches work with different grade levels. I know Mr. Kelwood works with the high school teachers, and Ms. Jefferson worked with the elementary, and now that Ms. Storr is being full-time teacher at Navajo Mid, I believe they split up the mid-school working. Mr. Kelwood has taken more of the mid-school as well, but I know Ms. Freeland also has stepped up to help in that capacity as well. So they do still talk together as groups, so they can support one another. Like, for example, all the high school teachers get together and they work with their coach, Mr. Kelwood, to see what's working and how they can help one another, some ideas that they roll around, that kind of thing. So they do still talk and communicate among one another.
So what you're putting out is what their input as well, or is it just here?
Yeah, They're the ones making the videos and all the lessons and whatnot. Yes.
Okay. I know then we have the Navajo Nation government as well, right? Do we have, is there a way we could get copies of the mapping for Navajo government and Navajo language?
Mapping, you mean the curriculum mapping
The
for
curriculum
Navajo
mapping, yeah.
language? You mean the high school or
All.
all? Yeah, we can get that and make it available, the SharePoint link to where those are housed at. Yeah. we can
Okay.
get that.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to, because I've been on the board 9 years, and ever since I came in, I've been trying to push Navajo language and culture, and I'm just when I first started, it was nothing. They go one point, it stops, and it drops. I've just seen an up and down. I have yet to see a plateau. So
Okay. Yeah, we can send you all the link to where those are housed at in SharePoint.
Gushi.
thank you.
Any other questions, board members?
Just one more, Mr. Long, thank you.
Okay.
One of the things that really bothered me, and I think it bothers some of the staff too, is our Navajo language and culture staff is, they really didn't have their own space or classroom. And I know a lot of that is why we did the lawsuit too, is, we didn't have the ability to have a Navajo language and culture classroom due to, again, the construction of our buildings. But, I think one of the goals I really would like to see, and maybe we do now, I'm not sure, because last time, I remember we had teachers that were just using carts, and all their supplies and all their lesson plans were on carts and really didn't have their own classroom. So I think one of the goals, since we are a huge number percentage-wise of bilingual education, that we should have that capacity to house our Navajo language and teachers in a classroom. So I don't know if that's changed. I don't know if we still have teachers on carts, but I think a goal would be to get them all into classrooms that they have themselves.
I believe all our teachers have their own classroom. I haven't been aware of anybody that's saying I'm on a cart. So I believe most all of them. I can double check to make sure, but I believe all of them do have their own individual classrooms that they can work out of.
That's awesome.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm done.
Gushi. Thank you, Pauletta, for your presentation.
Mr.
Thank
President.
you.
Board members, next one is notices and communications. You can read that on your own and put them in your calendar. And we are done with business. Board members, what is your pleasure?
Quick question, Mr. President.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just have a quick question. So we just have talked about, some of these lawsuits going our way, and we're hoping to see things change with impact aid. And since we were just talking about the language and culture education, and then also with the buildings that we're talking about, this might be probably more of a question for Mike Hyatt. Mr. Hyatt, what would some of those things that we just talked about, the buildings and this language and culture education, like how would that look different if things kind of go our way or the way we would like them to go with, through the resolution of these lawsuits and impact aid?
Well, one of the things, Mr. Mortensen and members of the board, that comes right to the top of my mind is that when buildings used to be constructed, they didn't construct them with funding for classrooms for Navajo language and culture or cultural classes. And so what we had to do is we had to create that class. But every time you create a new classroom or place inside of a building, it takes away from the square footage of others. And so that's how everything gets shrunk down. They're not giving us the adequate or the sufficient space for all of the programs that we were supposed to and are required to by law to teach in our schools. And so one of the remedies that we're looking for is so that we get the capacity or the ability to go far above adequacy, which is what the state calls it, to what we call an educational spec, so that we can house and build a facility that meets all of the needs of all students. It doesn't even, not just novel language and culture, this also happens with special education, which is a federal requirement. They don't give us the space in order to teach those students, and so we have to build in spaces, usually smaller, and then they take away from the other square footage, and so everything gets smaller. And so this is hopefully one of the remedies, is that we can start constructing buildings or add on to buildings that are already constructed in where we can to provide extra spaces when it's kind of crunched up, I guess you could say, or space is minimized. Crown Point Elementary, prime example of one that there has not been enough space and people are teaching off of stages and closets and doing services for special education students in hallways at times because they didn't give us the space. And so there's more examples than just that one, but that's one of the immediate things that this lawsuit, these lawsuits would help us do to meet students' needs.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Goshi. We are done with business, board members.
I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Shaw to adjourn, second by Chris Mortensen. Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito,
I'd like to vote yes, and also like to say thank you to Ms. Fraser and Ms. Freeland for being here, in support of Pauletta and her report today. Thank you for both being here.
Oh,
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
yes. Thank you, board members. We are adjourned. What time? 1:55.
Okay.
1:55. I should